Howdy, my name is Ben Klein, and this is my third speech titled Payment in Due Time. I'm going to be covering reasons why I believe that college athletes should be getting paid. First, I'm going to go over the speech, a couple slides that kind of support my points, and then I'll be showing off my keyword outline cards. A quote from Tommy Beer of Forbes.com covering NCAA men's football and basketball revenue described the depravity of funds by stating, quote, the top Division I schools earn an approximate of $8.5 billion in annual revenue, with 58% coming directly from men's football and basketball. Less than 7% of that revenue generated by the athletes goes to them in scholarships and stipends, which is a very astounding number. I'll go a little further. I think it's become increasingly clear over the past 2 or 3 decades that college athletes deserve to be paid their fair share, similar to a professional player. And today I will be describing 2 solutions that I believe are necessary to solve this issue and get the funds into the pockets of the players rather than the owners or universities. So like I said, first we're going to be covering a solution that I think is most likely to occur in the next 2 to 3 years, possibly. That's covering a universal stipend. And then the second solution is going to be one that I believe may be something that takes 5 to 10 years, but personally I think it is the right solution to go. And not to go too deeply into the second one, the first one is the most important, and this is the most likely solution or action to solve this problem. It would be the idea, like I said, of a universal stipend for all college athletes. Now, this comes from John Chait of NewYorkMagazine.com, where he says basically a simple and quick solution to college athletes being misrepresented and undervalued would be a universal stipend. To kind of start off, it's clearly the most fair and also the most supported version of pro-compensation talks around the country. Basing payoff of a weekly, hourly, practice schedule type deal per athlete can actually be quantified and distributed very easily like a federal loan for most regular students. Again, this also comes from John Chait of NewYorkMagazine.com. The stipend could also provide a lot of breathing room for lower income athletes with much needed access for that help, whether they're not on scholarship or they're walk-ons. Another thing that's interesting about this is that a stipend can be very closely related, like I said before, to a form of financial aid that really doesn't need to be returned, I guess against what a loan would be. And in 2014, according to athleticsscholarships.net, there was a stunning 79-1 unanimous decision in support of this stipend, where many athletes could receive upwards of $2,000 to $4,000 per year. By per year, we mean per semester that they're active in. With dual sport athletes, that would be 2 times either. Now, granted, this was huge. This was a small victory, as the article says, but it could lead to so much more, and it could mean so much more for any and every athlete across the country. Now, kind of transitioning into my personal belief, I do believe the stipend is a great idea, and I actually instill it in my own, but there's so much more left on the table for athletes after that type of dispersion, the universal stipend, is considered. That being, I truly personally feel and believe that college athletes should be paid on performance. Now, everyone else can receive that stipend, so we don't have too many complaints coming from athletes not being paid at all, but we're actually receiving a decent amount of spread and also some rightful compensation for those who either earn trophies or huge honors, All-American honors per year. Now, I believe players who see the most success really have nothing to show for it. It's so funny to see, especially here at A&M, there's nationally televised games, sellout crowds, especially here at A&M, it's 105,000 plus, where NFL games aren't even close to that. This is coming from the CharlotteObserver.com, and that money goes straight to the university and not to the player, which I believe is very wrong. Another thing is interesting about that is trophy winning players, the Heisman, the Naismith, They're huge honors, but there's no compensation for that. Where a player may not be going pro, but has won that trophy and has nothing to show for it other than the trophy, which I do know is a huge honor. But at the end of the day, a trophy is just a trophy. It doesn't pay the bills. Another thing that's interesting that has recently come up are NIL rules. NIL meaning name and likeness rules gives allowances to athletes to promote their own personal brand. Um, right here at A&M, we've just passed that rule, allowing players to sell their own merchandise, endorsements, promotions, stuff like that, in their own brand, where they can profit off of it, where they're not with the school, but their own name and brand, even though they are associated, doesn't have anything to do with it. Again, I would say this is a small victory as well in the footprint of a huge one. I think this could lead to something really, really big in the next couple years, and that's why I'm very excited about it. I think that this could lead to players truly deserving, getting what they deserve based on their performance. Also, it's very clear that this is highly debated, highly controversial, with a lot of different colleges pursuing different avenues of compensation, but none are, I'd say, set in stone on what they want to do because it's so controversial and there's so many alternating opinions on it. I would say that this is a topic, like I mentioned before, highly debated, highly controversial. But we're at a time and point now where students like myself and all of y'all in this class, there is a call for action. There is a need for action. We have the ability to really make a difference. Talk to our universities, our chancellors, our student bodies. Get this name out there. Talk to the people at our university and tell them the problems that we're having, especially those students who are not receiving what they should. We talked about universal stipends. We talked about my personal belief on being paid by performance. These are great steps, but we really need to take a big jump in the next 2 to 3 years to really make a difference. And I really want to go back. Just think back to that number that I mentioned in the intro. $8.5 billion generated by basketball and football. If that's not going to the players, in my personal belief, it should not be going anywhere. It should not be spent at all. Now, I realize that that's not going to happen, but I mean that first portion of money that gets distributed to universities needs to go back to the players. And that is a fact that I will hold on to for a very long time. Okay, so now I'll go into some of these slides. A couple of really interesting ones. A funny one there, kind of covering the coach making a lot of money versus an athlete, probably hugely successful, not being paid at all. The second one kind of shows that coach to player dynamic, how poorly managed college football is in that sense, where 53.4 million of the top 15 highest paid salary coaches versus $0 for All-Americans and Heisman winners. And it's kind of startling to see that number, 53.4 million versus 0. This next one is another graph and trend that kind of shows us AD revenue versus scholarship expenses, which shows you there's a huge gap. There is money out there that is not being spent on the athlete, even though it really should be based on that revenue. $144 million is a lot between $12.4 million in scholarship. And kind of going to this example, NIL, what I was talking about, recently it's been, before NIL was approved for a lot of these colleges, athletes were skipping out on the college route to avoid a loss of revenue. A lot of these athletes at 18, 19, 20 are going onto the social media, endorsing themselves, creating their own personal brands, and making great amounts of money that if they were in college, they wouldn't be allowed to do. Okay, now these are my keyword outline cards. There's the intro, body 2, in conclusion. These are also all on my outline. Thank y'all very much. Kick 'em.